Okay, awesome. Hello, everybody. It is 8:30 my time, and I kind of feel like this is the Adam Variety Hour, except it's only going to be me. So hopefully, this can be a half an hour. I wanted to give everybody a sense of what I've been doing. I think it's pretty exciting. I enjoy it. I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm spending about 11 hours a day creating a COVID log. I began it when COVID was kind of the dominant issue, which was late January. I saw some things within China that I thought were very irregular, and I know China really well. I'm so happy. A lot of people have asked me, what I think of this article, what I think of that article, what I think of the timeline and chloroquine, and there's just so much going on, and when I'm going to be coming out with my log. I think the feeling is that it would be kind of good for humanity if I did something now, but I don't think that would be good for humanity. So that kind of brings me to this Periscope. I thought it'd be a really good time for me to say why I don't think it would be good and why I'm holding off until late 2021, early 2022. And then, because what I've done is so comprehensive, there is no expedient way to tell the story, right? There's just no easy way to tell it. I've tried to do kind of I guess an elevator pitch, right? Because I come out of sales. So I've tried to compress the thing into something that's easy. It's digestible, and it's not possible, right? My best way of summarizing what's going on right now is this is the fastest roll-up of power in history. Really remarkable. And I think my best contribution to humanity, right, is to be the chronicler of what's going on. As I really enjoyed reading Thucydides. I've really enjoyed studying the Peloponnesian Wars, and I've enjoyed some of the characters within it. And this is a history that was not being shared daily as it was occurring. There was just too much complexity going on. And if there is any star of it, maybe it's me, right? Because one of my favorite characters, perhaps that I've ever read, is Alcibiades. So I kind of think of myself a little bit of Alcibiades because it was just so remarkable that he could go into each camp and kind of cut a deal with each camp, right? Although in the end, the speculation is that they hunted him down and whatever, but I try and block that part out. So I want to be the person who chronicles what's going on. And I've seen a lot of people kind of contribute slivers of that story. And I think that's awesome. There are a lot of doctors out there who have been really fantastic, both in bringing awareness to chloroquine and to this and to that. And then other, who are, who think they're fighting the good fight, and I think they are, just bringing more awareness to the actual studies that have gone on. And then there's another group of people that I also have respect for that are kind of adversarial, right? They're the ones who don't think, that those studies are reliable, and they want to wait until it can be absolutely proven that certain things work. And I don't want to allow myself to get involved in those things. So I try and think of myself within everything that's going on in the world right now. I try and think of this, again, as the fastest roll-up of power in history. I guess it has to be in history. So I think of this kind of as that period when it went from the Macedonian Empire, right? Alexander the Great, who's another one of my heroes. I love that guy. That guy's amazing. From Alexander the Great to the rise of the Roman Empire, and how that occurred, and how all of what was achieved under Alexander the Great became transferred over to the Roman growing empire, because it happened kind of leaps and bounds. And that happened over, I suppose, 100 or so years. Depends on when you want to start the clock. And here, just like a chess game, chess games take too long. I guess let's say a Scrabble game, right? Because they're like an hour long. we can kind of observe what's going on. And in chess and everything else, in a lot of games, you do postmortems where you can kind of analyze what occurred and look at alternatives and kind of see the consequences of each of the things. So I try and look at this. I've described it a lot as thinking of myself as a disembodied intellect, right? So I'm not focusing on the election at all. That, I don't let myself get emotionally engaged in the election. I'm kind of bewildered by it because I wish a lot of topics would be discussed that haven't, pharma and a whole bunch of things. So I'm bewildered by it, but I'm really not allowing myself to emotionally engage in it. I don't think it would be helpful for telling by chronicle, and I don't want to introduce any more biases than I want to avoid as much bias as I can. So a lot of what I'm doing is doing forensics even on what I've already done. I want to be extremely precise in my language. And I was speaking with somebody yesterday who I'm going to do a Periscope with. So I'm kind of pumped about that. And he asked me about a timeline. I thought that was really interesting. And why not unleash a timeline now and try and kind of clear up some of the ambiguity that's out there. And I thought that would be kind of a good agenda for discussing here. So let me see what time it is so I can respect everybody's time. It's 8:37. So I'm going to ramble for about 18 minutes or so. And as that occurs, I'll do my best to look up to see what everybody's comments are. So somebody's telling me to turn it off. Okay, I hope they're not talking to me. So I turned it off. Okay, so hopefully everybody can hear me good. And hopefully they weren't giving me some kind of a cue. And maybe they were just telling me to turn whatever off, which I'll figure out later. I guess something's on. So I cannot present a timeline to this right now, because where should the timeline begin? Does it begin in mid-December? Does it begin November 17th? Does it begin January 2nd when China first mapped? Does it begin December 31st when Taiwan sent out the email? Or does it begin much earlier? Because I'm also focused on what occurred much earlier. And one of the interesting things, and I've discussed this with a lot of people, and I've tested a lot of people, because it's really interesting to get inside people's minds, right? And sometimes I don't want to leave. I want to stay there. So it's really interesting because if you take a look, so one of the things I did within my own timeline is I looked at probably about 2 years preceding. And I think some people on Twitter might recall that I was asking people for all the scandals that they could recall that Trump was, that the media really emphasized, and everything was breaking news. It was breaking news with Stormy Daniels. It was endless, and I was going to bring them down. And then this, and then there was Iran. So I within my daily log, I'm trying to capture all that. And I'm not, in those instances, I'm really not trying to chronicle them or write them up. I'm trying to observe a pattern, right? And the pattern is very episodic. It goes like this. So you'll see one story, let's say Stormy Daniels, and you'll see it pop, where that's just the absolute leading story and everything else. And I've mapped some of the articles. It's ridiculous. And some of you are helping me. I know Chaim was helping me understand better Google Trends and why it's not what I needed to do. So I found alternative ways of kind of presenting the amount of articles and the amount of bombardment that was occurring about each of the things, from 2 scoops of ice cream, which I think is I think it's kind of an awesome thing for the media to have spent so much time on, because I always eat more ice cream than everybody else. I mean, I always do. It shouldn't be a scandal. That's just what I do. So I always ask for seconds and thirds. And if I get that opportunity, if I look over and the person's got less ice cream, I feel a little bit better about myself because I like ice cream. So then was it, the 2 scoops gate that people might not recall now, where they might say, well, it was this trivial kind of inconsequential type of thing. And I can tell you it wasn't. A lot of these things were just a bombardment of the senses. And that becomes very important as we progress into the timeline within that occurred later on. And that includes so many things. So, again, there's just been so many scandals, and then or so many things that the media could kind of fill your frontal lobe with, which I think when you take a look at this type of a timeline, you can see how much media wanted to have their presence within your thoughts. And one of the things my entire COVID log does, because it's big, it's really big. Right now, there's about 50 different, about 45 different buckets that I'm looking at. So one of I got lost, right? So one of so I'm beginning the timeline kind of around 2017 because I figured I'd start capturing some of the stories then, and you can see it here. So you would see Stormy Daniels, peak up here, and then you would quickly see a de-escalation, and then another story would come immediately up, and not true no longer mattered. And that's one of the things that I found to be very, very interesting. And it's something, as I rehearse and practice these things, that I would love to interrogate people on what they think, because I think of it, and I know I was just discussing this yesterday with Darren Beatty, and it's something I enjoy kind of contemplating, and kind of that introspection is, I call it fake reality, real news. And it's a really interesting thing when you take a look at all the body of stories that are coming out, and the way something can be true today. Chloroquine is true today, or it doesn't have to be true tomorrow. None of the news has to be the only time that news has to be true is as it hits your cognitive senses, because once it hits your frontal lobe, it is true. You may not acknowledge that it's true. There's a lot of things that are going on, but even the amount of kind of real estate that it's taking up in your brain, in a way, makes it true. And the amount of effort required to combat whether it's not true or not is exhausting, right? It's exhausting. So as I think everybody has realized, and I think politically both sides of any camp, right, are just emotionally exhausted, and there's just no reservoir left that anybody has, which makes them particularly vulnerable to a lockdown, to a quarantine. So I'm skipping around a little bit in this. So within, again, going into an elevator and trying to describe this to people. So I've said it's the fastest roll up in history. I've also compared it to Dark City, because something I thought since the day the quarantine was announced, or the days in advance of the quarantine, was that this is Dark City. I think it's really interesting. So it's Dark City because who I am today. The world is changing around me, and as I'm locked into my house, and I'm not locked in here right now, I can leave if I want, but so as I'm in my house, when I leave, it's a different world. And every time I leave, it's not just superficially different, which, they out here, all the cafes have to be outdoors and nothing's going on inside, and they have to wear the face mask and the whole thing. So those are the superficial things. And it's not just anecdotally, the world has changed, where I'll see a homeless person here more regularly than I would see other, homeless people. And kind of those anecdotal type of things, I think the streets are a little bit dirtier. But what's really happening, so now I've said it's the fastest roll up of power in human history, and hopefully people have a bit of a sense more of what I mean by that. I've also said it's Dark City. So in Dark City, in the sense that the world is changing while we're locked into our house, and the superficial differences are just kind of rearranging, rearranging the restaurant designs and all these other type of things. But I'm trying to chronicle also the things that can't be so easily observed, which is, the Constitution, and how we're seeing, and I know I've discussed this before, and I like discussing it, is how we're seeing kind of the Constitution being displaced, and what has already been swapped in. So I got bad news for you. We're already here. Is in terms of service. And I recall speaking with a lot of people and trying to help them understand the way I see it, which is that the politicians just became too distant from their electorate. They didn't want to be responsive to their electorate, and they didn't want to, concede all the things that they had done wrong and whatever. So they just kind of retreated, and they no longer had any type of touch with their electorate. I see Cy Wasserman is here. Cy, you were awesome with those Dark City things, man. That was really awesome. Cy gave me like the director's cut where you can see the director speaking over, or you can hear him. It's really interesting notes. See the movie. I'm telling you, it's a really good movie. I got lost because I saw Cy. I'm so excited to see Cy here. So within what people have asked of me and what I've tried to explain to people when I tell them I'm keeping a log, and I think the people like to say he's keeping receipts or something, or whatever the phrase is about keeping receipts. I've got a lot of receipts. I download everything. So if you ever saw a video of people in China trembling, like spontaneously collapsing, they spontaneously tremble and then kind of disappear. I've got that downloaded because these things disappear. The links disappear, the 404, everything gets 404. So I've had to download all of this. And I've also had to do kind of this comparative science of the articles before they got updated and before the language was changed. And a lot of them don't tell you that the language was changed. They don't care. You'll never notice. So whatever I'm rambling into now, I've said fastest roll-up of power in human history. I've said Dark City in terms of the world is changing around us. Our laws are changing. The Constitution has been completely displaced. You just haven't realized it yet because you haven't really re-entered the world. And all of this is happening without your participation. So you're not protesting this. And because of the complexity of it and the speed of it, it's nothing tangential that you can, that you can kind of grasp. So that's what my chronicle is. It's trying to grasp this really complex war and everything that goes into it. And I do look at it as a war. So going back into that elevator, when somebody asks me what it is, those are the terms that I really use to describe it. And I anticipated a bailout, I think, around February. I thought there was going to be real problems with a bailout. I thought it was going to happen. I thought America was going to do it. I thought China was going to do it. And I thought of why. And it seems like we also have, it's also, these financial bailouts are episodic also. So the news is episodic, right? Everything is amplified. And then whatever the word is, de-amplified or something, or they turn down the gain or whatever they tell me to do on the microphone. So everything goes like this. And it's the same thing with the bailouts, because we had the auto bailout, we had the bank bailout, we had, I suppose, what could be called the pharma bailout. And we're just getting them with a lot more frequency. And I thought of the bailouts also because I knew that China was very vulnerable. I was very suspicious of seeing people kind of spontaneously collapse on the streets in China. And the amount of, I was surprised to see it on Twitter with as much virality as it was given. It was very unusual. And that's probably what made me very suspicious. I knew in late November, I knew in mid-November, I guess, maybe even, I knew in October, because I think I wrote a whole tweet thread about this, and I wrote a lot within my, within people I work with, that China was very vulnerable. They were losing clients in the Belt and Road. It was a complete failure. So it's been a complete failure so far in many, many ways. There are many countries that are in significant debt to the China Exim Bank. Those countries are very vulnerable, and Sri Lanka just gave up its poor, and Djibouti, and so much other things was going on. So in December, when there was a debt-denominated crunch where they needed to come up with a lot of money, there was also a tremendous amount of dissent going on in the mainland, where there was the protests you saw in Hong Kong, but then there was also protests that you didn't see. So you saw the ones in Hong Kong; those were very visible because there was a lot of media availability. So there was a lot of press around there. And the ones on mainland, there's no press, right? They've been abandoned, and they were suffering from very, very high inflation. They were also suffering from the devaluation of the yuan and the impact that had on their own export industries, and that they were losing to other countries. So again, going back to the beginning, I don't know where to begin a timeline, because I think these things are absolutely essential. First, to give it, to allow people to kind of comprehend the whole thing. And so ultimately, when I do tell this story, I'm not going to make it a movie. I'm not going to make it a book. I'm going to make it a whole bunch of documentaries, right? I'm going to slice it in. I'm going to take a pizza pie, I guess, and turn it into about 40 slices. And that's and it's going to be a small pizza pie, right? So everyone's going to be suffering for that. No, I'm going to try and make each one of them very comprehensive, and each one of them is only going to be a few minutes. So where do we begin the timeline? Do we begin it in November? Do we begin it in December? And also, what's very important is when I tell the timeline, I have to make sure that it's absolutely unimpeachable, and that's very difficult for people right now. Because everyone's looking for a simple answer. Everyone's looking for, as I describe it to a lot of people want postcards, right? So when I try and tell them it's the fastest roll-up of power, and I try and tell them kind of some of the things that have occurred with the failures of the World Health Organization, they'll say something like, well, of course, then this and this and this. So I was just describing it to my wife when, if somebody were to ask me about where I went, if somebody were to ask me, tell me about France, right? So now I'm going to tell people about France. But all I'm going to do rather than tell them is I'm going to show them a postcard of the Eiffel Tower. That's it. That's all they're going to know about it. So if somebody wants to know about France, do I just give them that postcard and let them figure out the rest? But that's what people want. People just want a postcard, and then once they see the Eiffel Tower, they're going to, in their minds, create everything on the periphery of it. And in fact, they're even going to create a history of it. I want to reduce that element. I don't want them to impose upon, this postcard I don't want them to create information that's not real, right? I don't want to kind of allow them to go on this kind of crazy delusion, right? So if I give people just a postcard and just explain it, a lot of people just want me to distill it into maybe 50 words. So the only way I've been able to do that is the fastest roll-up of power in history and Dark City, because I think that those really kind of catch the moment. Another way I think is interesting, so people can kind of ponder it, is what came first, the bailout or the virus? Right? I was thinking about that in February when it became clear that there was going to be some type of a shutdown. Which came first? Really interesting thing to think about. The other thing that I think about within this, and I'm so appreciative to be able to observe this and to have this moment in history, as unpleasant as it is, because it kind of sucks, but I'm so appreciative that I have this opportunity to chronicle it. I get to role play Thucydides, and I get to cast myself as Alcibiades, because you'll see it's going to be really awesome. It's going to be a true adventure story, I guess, in the end. So I want to see if there's any questions out there, because I've rambled a little bit, but I wanted to address why I haven't been able to present everything that I've been working on now. When people say it might be helpful for Trump, or it might be helpful for Biden, or it might have some political implications, I can't fight that battle. I can't fight that battle, because when I have looked at timelines, every timeline I've looked at, pretty much it's been generated, that's been Washington Post or New York Times. Hey, Jack, so wonderful to see you here. Thank you so much. So every timeline that I've gone over, and because I wanted to include any new information within my own timelines, I want them to be as complete as I can. I face a new battle, and the new battle is that those timelines all begin now in February. All the timelines that I've seen, even the ones that are coming out of Europe, begin in February. They begin, actually, most of them begin, I would say, in mid-January. And they seem to miss all the failures of China, which I could talk about at length, but I'm not going to bore anybody with this one. But I promise you, I'll do a continuation if you're interested, where I can get more into kind of the precision of what I'm discussing. But the timelines that I've seen in Washington Post, New York Times, National Review, whatever I look at, I mean, I look for all of these kind of rigorously. I'm looking for all these things. All now fail to have any, there's no history before, I would say, mid-January. Nothing happened before then. So, there's no longer a China as a culprit. There's no longer a World Health Organization that had extreme failures in what's called the IHR. which is the regulations that were created in 2005, international health regulations, and there is no mention of the violations both from China and their failure to notify who World Health Organization, but there's also no mention of the failures of the World Health Organization, which have been completely documented. These things are not my own kind of fabrication. So I've had to make everything I'm doing pristine. I've had to make it unquestionably true and that could withstand any type of harsh interrogation. So a lot of the timelines I'm looking at now, which I would love to rebut, but it would be fruitless, are things I'm seeing out of New York Times. I'll look at them all the time, and I'll see their history begins after the Chinese New Year. It's really interesting. I've never thought about that before, but it really does begin after the Chinese New Year, and they try and create this perception of the failures of the Trump administration, which I also don't really want to challenge them or defend them right now because I don't want to have that emotional attachment. These things are out of my control. I just want to chronicle the failures right now of the news in this instance, because this is its own kind of thing, a little chapter, let's call it. In this instance, it's failures and it's erasure of anything that happened before mid-January. And I can tell you there was a lot that happened in mid-January. There is not as much gaps in information as you might think. There's actually a lot of documentation. There was, and a lot has been confirmed. So, I can tell you December 27th, they had already kind of confirmed that it was SARS because the lab results came back in China. There's also kind of this, I don't want to call it a lie, because I don't think these agencies are explicitly lying. I think what they're doing is deliberately sowing confusion. So I think that one instance I can give you is there's, and it's been kind of diffused and propagated through our own media, which is horrible when we're suffering this, but is that China, People's Republic of China, notified the World Health Organization. And I see that all the time. And it's even within the timeline. But China, they'll say something very tricky, and I'll walk you through it right now. They'll say something like, we were, World Health Organization will say kind of, adamantly, I'm pounding my fist on something like that, okay? So they'll say, we were notified by China, right? Or we were notified within China. Actually, lately they've come up with a new one. They'll say we were notified by Wuhan, right? Now that is kind of true, but it's actually mostly not true, right? So if I was one of those snoops, whatever they call that, Snopes, or PolitiFact type of thing, I don't know how I would rate that, because what happened is that the World Health Organization found out through an American log that was created that observes where doctors go into and they post viruses that are going out and epidemics that are going on and a whole bunch of other things. And China saw that. The World Health Organization saw that. They inquired. They asked their office at in Wuhan to inquire to the CDC, because China has its own CDC, and that agency on December 31st, which was not the People's Republic of China, are the ones who notified the World Health Organization. So if you can see, it's a little bit, they were notified by China, but they were notified within China in Wuhan, by Wuhan, but they were not notified by the People's Republic of China. They were notified by this agency within it, which was the World Health Organization. They were also notified by Taiwan on December 31st. And there was also observation that they were censoring social media throughout China. They were censoring their own social media to withdraw any mentions of labs, to withdraw any mention of Wuhan or the flu or anything else. So there's been no prosecution of what's gone on in China. So again, I am posed with a problem, is that I would like to kind of contribute to reality. But right now I'm combating fake reality, real news. I'm combating a media. I'm having to compete with a media that is demanding the your entire frontal lobe they want to have possession of. Oh, I'm seeing Adam. He was trying to expose him. Okay, I don't know. Maybe that's me. China, Taiwan notified them in December. That's kind of what I said. So I'm not going to look at those right now because it might be a distraction. So I do want to go to questions, but first I just want to kind of complete that I don't know where to begin a timeline. Do I begin a timeline with when we were going to go to war with Iran and how much that consumed our media and people's frontal lobes? Do I say when Trump murdered the terrorist in Iran? These were all really big news stories that happened right before, and they happened in succession. It went like this. And then do I begin it by noting the failures of the World Health Organization? Because again, now I'm dealing with I have to be very precise in my language because I want to be unimpeachable. And I also have to deal with whatever I say to somebody will be repeated. And most likely it'll be repeated by that. I tell this person information and they take as much as they can in. And then when they transmit it to the next person, they're turning it into a postcard, right? So they're going to take my kind of 15-minute explanation. I've been sitting down with them for 15 minutes and drinking lattes or whatever we drink. And that was a joke, the lattes. But so I give them this complete story because I'm an expert on this thing. Now I tell it to this person who acts kind of interested, right? And because I'm paying for lunch probably. So then so now I've transferred this information to them. Now that person is going to say, is going to kind of recap everything that I said to the next person. They're going to transfer some of that, but they're going to turn it into a postcard. And then the whole thing has been lost. I don't want anything I'm doing to be turned into a postcard. I think this is too interesting of a history. I think the dark city element of it is too interesting. And I'm hoping that in 2021 or 2022, I think that there's another phrase I like to say is that spectacles at the Coliseum always got bigger. And I've been saying that now for really the last 9 months. I've been saying it before that, but really saying that since Kill the Terrorist and then in January with Iran, because again, it's this episodic thing. But like in Spinal Tap, where they turn the volume up to 11, they turn the volume up to 11. So Stormy Daniels, blah, 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 throwing, the Martin Luther King bust or whatever it was. There's just so much things. People would be shocked. You've forgotten everything. I remember everything. You just remember the headline. I've got the whole thing down and chronicled. So, but then, the episodes, I suppose I could say they got longer, right? So maybe they took a 30-minute episode and they turned it into an hour episode or something, and they made it more exciting. So they kept on, making it larger and larger. So where do I begin a timeline so as to make it unimpeachable, where everything I say has to be correct and true, and I'm combating fake reality, real news. So hopefully in February, I assume my thinking is that it's world is still, that spectacles are going to keep on getting larger, right? I don't think whoever is the president in 2021 that that they're going to close up the Coliseum and everybody goes about their business. The Coliseum is now the world we all live in, which is good because I've been training for the Thunderdome forever, so I feel kind of ready for this. But they're not going to close up the Coliseum, and those spectacles are going to just keep on getting larger and larger. So I want my history to be told, and it's really comprehensive. I mean, it's not just a timeline. I'm discussing so many things, and actually, I'll read out loud, and then I'm going to take some of the people's questions, but I'll read out loud some of the categories that I work on all the time. So let me just open these up. So I start with the 2017 travel ban, actually. I also map Amazon share price because nothing is done for Amazon what the resistance has done. It's been really remarkable. I call the protesters and resistance unknowingly, some of them unknowingly, the phalanx for the megacorps. So I'm within my COVID log, I have not neglected that. This is a living organism. I'm trying to diagnose not just COVID. I'm trying to diagnose this moment in history, and I am um, looking kind of like at an elephant, and I'm trying to kind of capture every. I'm trying to capture that organism as best as I can, capture and then kind of convey that organism in all its complexities. So it's really difficult to do. So I'll walk you through some of the other things, but I want you to understand that these are within the log. These all exist together. Um, Anti-Slavic, because come on, I could talk about that guy. Then I've got a thing on some April, China says no COVID deaths. And these are all a bunch of stories, and I've downloaded them. The April COVID timeline, articles and studies saying the lockdown saved lives, because I've got a lot of those studies and I've done forensics on all the citations. Citations are like backlinks on Google. There are a bunch of kind of crooked type of things. Then I go into the Black Lives Matter, and to the studies where the protests were encouraged, and all the doctors were saying, no, go out there and protest. I go into Boris Johnson because, come on, I got to tell you about Boris Johnson. I'm like, serious? He is not, maybe he's like the political Tom Hanks. I don't know. I got to think about that. Bulverism, which is a phrase from C.S. Lewis. So I'm going to bore you guys with this for just a little bit longer, but I want to get you the California teenager that they said died of COVID and he didn't, and perhaps somebody I know spoke with his family. Celebrities with COVID, because that's off the charts. The way China built hospitals, China clears itself, which is really good to do when you clear yourself of any culpability in this pandemic. Then I'll just bore you guys with. And I'm only up to the C's. I've got a whole thing on chloroquine, civil rights around the world, And there's a lot of blogs that I follow that are really doing a great job of kind of memorializing and really commentary from a legal standpoint of what's going on. I've got some anecdotal type of fun stuff where the COVID doctor, Dr. Fair fakes. I don't know if people remember that, but the guy faked it. Then right now I'm working on COVID comes back in July and all the media around there. And then I'll just skip around a little bit. So I'll just give you guys a sense of it. COVID, this one's funny. COVID regretfully explained, well, actually, I'm not going to explain that. I've gone into the Wayback Machine a lot because a lot of articles no longer exist. And there is also Chinese propaganda and our own propaganda. And I don't know if people remember, but just about a month ago, if you were to type in any 4 digits, let's say, or 3 digits, 4321, and then say new cases into Google, 4321 new cases, it would generate many stories, all on COVID. And there was no number I could come up with that wouldn't produce a COVID, that COVID number. So if the number was 7778, I would type it in new cases and it would come out 7,778 cases reported today. And then I would go to the articles themselves and the articles had never been crawled. A lot of them were from little news outlets that basically don't exist. I would go to the URL itself, and it would be only a news site would only have been crawled like 15 times in the last year, or it was crawled every single day, but the news of that article. And that's something I'm discussing also, and that's really interesting, but it takes a lot of time. So I don't want to bother people too much with kind of me explaining this more. I've got a thing on Justin Trudeau because that guy, man, Canada jumped the shark with that guy. Woof. Then I'm talking about masks a lot. And so basically, it's going to be really interesting. And I feel like I'm trying to promote I've got a whole thing on Tom Hanks because you know that. You know my theories on the Tom Hanks thing. March 11th, the guy says he's got coronavirus. March 11th, the NBA says they're shutting themselves down. March 11th, Merkel does her huge speech. I could just tell you March 11th was such a key day in history. So I could go on even about the wrong predictions because I haven't let anybody slide. I've got everybody. Whatever they said, I'm talking about only doctors. I'm talking about professionals. I'm not particularly interested what this person said or that person said. I'm really only talking about the actual professionals, not other people who might have also said their words with perhaps new language and more enthusiastically. So I want to make sure I'm still here. So I rambled a little bit. Thank you so much for having patience with me. I'm running overtime. I want to answer some questions if people have questions. I see Ari Frenzy says a lot of studies have been scrubbed from PubMed. Well, again, perhaps that's true, and I'll certainly kind of observe it. So thanks for bringing that to my attention. Um, so I don't know if those studies should have been scrubbed or not. I'd have to get a little bit of background on what happened. I think that there's an amazing number of studies that have not been peer reviewed, considering that this is a virus that shut down the world. There's not a lot of interest in it from large medical institutions, and there's a lot of kind of corruption going on with these daily tests that they want to give. And I don't want to imply anything beyond that. I just think that there's other influences there. Thank you, Matilda. Fun story when you were in China. Oh, okay. Man, is the stream barely working for others? I hope my tech is good. So I want to make sure that I respond to a couple of questions. So if somebody has a question, if you can type it in quickly. And thank you so much for staying with me a little bit longer than I intended. First official COVID death in New York City was March 11th. Was that right? I might have put that in my thing. That's really interesting. You said that. I might have captured that also. New York City. It's very interesting, and I think people might have seen my thread on New York City that I shared. I shared a little bit of what I've been doing. Let me go to March 11th. I shared a little bit of what I've been doing about New York City, and I can't think of any other way to describe it than they acted as an accelerant. I mean, whether that was deliberate or not deliberate, I think it's a fair turn. In fact, the studies have shown that they acted as an accelerant. A lot of that happened on the subways. So let me just look at March 11th, because is that true? That's wild. March 11th. I don't know. Okay, I'll look at that one later. Thank you so much for sharing that. I do want to. Okay, so does anybody have questions for me? Ask me something. Thank you so much, Charles. Solid job, Adam. MTT, do you believe? Hold on, I really want to see what you said. Hold on, I want to see what you said. I want to answer some of the questions. I'm really interested in what everyone's thinking. Okay. Do you believe 3/11 was coincidence or planned global rollout? I don't know. I'm trying not to speculate on anything, because I think that interferes with I'm trying to remove myself subjectively as much as I can, and preserve myself as a disembodied intellect. And I think that if I go on a speculative tangent, then I'm guilty of the same thing that I've described to others about that postcard, right? So if I attach myself too much to it, then I'm living in that postcard, and I'm looking at the Eiffel Tower, and I'm creating the universe around it, whether that is a real universe or whether that's the real grounds that the Eiffel Tower is on or not. I'm kind of fictionalizing it, and I'm trying to get away from that. So I think March 11th was a very interesting date, because it's when kind of the world became aware of it. And I think it was March 16th that Imperial came out with their study that shocked the world, and then I've got all those news. Canada just talks about cases, not mortality. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting use of words. And again, I would describe it as confusion. And how that's infused into us, whether it's deliberate or not, or people can kind of, and a lot of ambiguity and kind of a lot of tricks with words. So one of the things I described to Matilda, and thank you so much for being here, and we were talking about, I think it was via DM, or I don't remember, but was that, when I go over the forensics of these articles in the Washington Post, and pretty much all of them, they're all basically saying the same thing. They're all getting fed from the same AP Newswire, whatever it is that they'll have 40 paragraphs that I would be delighted to debunk. It's just not the right time. But they'll have of an article with 41 paragraphs. They'll have 40 paragraphs. It's just I don't want to say not true, but arguable. Let's just say that arguable. But then they'll have one that's I think is very accurate. So in 40 paragraphs, part of my burden is to find that one that's true, and then. It's interesting when I find that one that's true, because I wonder if it was the writer that somehow inserted that, and hope he could slip it, or she could slip it, or Zara, whatever, could slip it past their boss, and they could be kind of like this Renaissance artists slipping in all these messages and these kind of coded things that only an intellectual would be able to pick up on. So is that writer trying to slip something in? I don't know. I just think that it's admirable sometimes when I can find 40 paragraphs of obfuscations and misrepresentations, and then I'm so relieved when I find one paragraph of true. So let me see if there's any other questions. They cover us with nonsense. 3/11 is the day of the Fukushima earthquake and tsunami hit, and how the Japanese refer to it. Oh, it's very interesting. So let me just see if there's any questions that I can kind of be responsive to right now. Amazon pairing with drone companies. Let me tell you, it's very interesting, the surveillance that was occurring in China, occurring in Australia. They did it by different methods. In Europe, and it's. I worry sometimes of how harmonious these things are, and I suppose the stars kind of do align. But in this universe that we are in, they are aligning with alarming frequency. So I just want to see some new comments and then make sure I've addressed everything. So please, if somebody asked me to explain the roll-up of power, so and it's Charles again, who's just such a wonderful writer. The roll-up of power is very interesting to me because we're seeing the cartelization of the United States. We're seeing the cartelization of the world. And it's very interesting because I've been working on this theory for several years. The world is, we've seen over the last 40 years, we've seen the world defragment, right? Everything kind of got broken up and it was a startup universe, and, that's what was happening. And now we're seeing the defragmenting of it, where everything is now, it's kind of like the oscillating universe, I guess, right? Everything is now, we've seen it, the Big Bang. If there was a Big Bang, we can't prove that either. So we've seen, everything kind of coming apart, and now it's oscillating universe. It's kind of all coming back together again. I seem like an Egyptian priest. I could be an Egyptian priest. So I think we're seeing the cartelization, which is, everybody knows on Twitter, I've been very emphatic about buying the cartels, right? What's Facebook? I don't know on Amazon, right? But Google, the rest of them, Boeing, these are all the cartels that are rolling everything up. They're just rolling everything up. And I'm worried. I think Nancy was telling me today that one of these stores, New York City and Company, when, it's going bankrupt and this company's going bankrupt, and who else can afford them now but to buy out the whole thing but Amazon? So they're just going to continue going on a buying spree completely unobstructed. And they've been able to succeed at this and to win public support for this because, as I said earlier, while the politicians were retreating from their electorate, right, they were very unresponsive. I can call Nancy Pelosi if I want to, but I've had the money and I have the kind of, I've done it for, they're just going to look me up and say, has he ever contributed to the Democratic Party? How much? Was he ever bundled for something? But for most people, they don't have any proximity anymore, any relationship with their state senators, with their Congress people. They have no proximity. But the megacorps do, right? They're much more immediately responsive to their end users. If you have an issue with Amazon, Amazon will resolve it. So Amazon becomes both sides of the marketplace, which is also very upsetting because you have to now mediate everything. It's now their legal system we're using. We've now abandoned our own legal system for resolving these disputes, and we now have relied on Amazon. And people think that's a good thing. Perhaps it is, because our system was working so inefficiently. Whether that was deliberate or not, I don't know. But these megacorps are spending, Farmers is spending $20 billion this year on ads. Was it 20? Or I don't want to misstate the number because then somebody's going to say, it's mistaken. I think the number was 20 billion. I'm not going to look it up right now. Actually, to avoid any type of aggravation, I'm going to say 10 billion, and then I can be surprised to the upside, right? So I think it was, I'm going to say 10 billion on ads this year in America alone. That's only on ads. They're going to be spending billions of dollars more on doctor-patient groups. That happens a lot on Facebook groups, and other people are probably more of an authority. Look at me, I'm sweating here. Wow. So Farmers spending $10 billion this year on ads, and Russia only spent $10,000. So what type of influence is the pharma buying, and what is the relationship being between not letting me out of my house? Well, I can get out of my house, but I can't go too far. And the pharma industry, and now the pharma industry is really pushing the daily test and these other type of things that they want people to take several of these actually a day, and they have some kind of, they do have some purposes though, but these tests fall well below regulations and are self-certifying. Um, we've got the deep state, but it's not who we think we are. We've got these megacorps, and they're winning all the battles. So I think the only way, my only resistance that I can offer is my chronicle of this, is my log. So again, I want to get to a question or two. I've talked so much. Who is Amazon's biggest company? Who is Amazon's biggest competitor? I would say is the United States. Amazon is a country, and we are competing with them. So they've got first world propaganda. I mean, they at this point they are a country. Who is spending? I watch for who is spending money on advertising. Yeah, so it's not just the money that they're spending on advertising; it's also the amount of lobbying and the amount of complexity that's going into the lobbying. And I'm very familiar with the ACA Act. I was a part of it because of Obamacare and because of my company's TriNet and Administraff. So I'm really familiar with this stuff. And lobbying, there's a lot of dirt that goes into lobbying that you don't see. Walmart, somebody wrote Walmart. Perhaps that's as a competitor to Amazon. No, we're well beyond Walmart. Walmart at least paid municipal taxes, right? Walmart had a municipal presence. I could go into the store, right? If I wanted to boycott or if I wanted to picket Walmart, I could just go to their location and have my little sign or something and picket them. I can't do that against Amazon. So Amazon, as they have no physical presence in most cities, they have they're like they're like have that cloak of invisibility or something. So they're very difficult to prosecute in terms of their avoidance of taxes and the amount of inversions that they use. There's just so much, and their infiltration of sovereignty, their infiltration of every country with their back end, with them building up their clouds for these countries. They're competing for Saudi Arabia. It's really interesting the amount of infiltration they've done. But again, I want to chronicle it so I can tell the story in a way that one of the interesting things is one of the ways I describe it when I'm in an elevator. This is a good way I've been describing it lately. Is in those movies that you see in the future, and it's megacorps, right? The megacorps own everything, and Honda owns everything, and whatever. It's always like a Japanese company and this company and that company where they own everything, right? And it's their constant surveillance of you, and there's very little presence of any type of country. So you just assume that they are the country, and I call that whatever. In any event, so but the megacorps own everything, right? They own the whole world. Here, this is how that happened. So in those sci-fi movies, there's never like an origin story, like the Wolverine origin story. It just is what it is. So you're entering into a world where that's already happened. You're entering into a world where you're arriving at the planet of the apes. And I'm trying to now backfill. And so what we're seeing is how those megacorps came to being and how they displaced sovereign countries, how they displaced territorial sovereignty, right, with functional sovereignty, how they displaced our currency, the dollar is always going to be supreme, so whatever, but how they displaced our currency in terms of its usage and its regulation with their own type of Amazon coin or, whatever it is. It's going to be really interesting, really interesting. I'm really excited about it. So the future of cyberpunk, I don't know. I mean, Neuromancer, yeah, I don't know. Amazon spent $17 million on lobbyists in 2019. Oh, they spent a lot more than that. You're looking at kind of superficial disclosures. Megacorps now, the movie Brazil. I should really re-see the movie Brazil. So please, everybody, enjoy Dark City, and I'm really interested in what your thoughts are, just both an enjoyment of the movie and if you can kind of understand what I mean by them rearranging, the world. Adam today wakes up Joe tomorrow. So today I go to sleep and I'm Adam. Tomorrow I wake up and I'm Joe. And my world starts then. So my world started today and there was nothing before it. And tomorrow I'll be another person. And it's really interesting because everything gets changed at night. And here we are where everything is being changed. Not just, the clearly, present changes, but kind of structural changes, which I think is really interesting. Cy Wasserman says the commentary. Yeah, he loves the commentary. So is there any questions? I want to address them now, if I could. And thank you again all so much for indulging me and allowing me to ramble. This is my cold call to you. I've told everybody how I love cold calling. Well, I don't love. That's the wrong way of phrasing it. How it's the optimal path, the quickest path from A to Z is to cold call, and you cut out a lot of the everything in the middle. You just cut out, and it also gives the cold caller a chance to rehearse themselves, and it gives them a chance to listen. And I've completely failed at listening. So my apologies that I failed, and I'd love to see more comments. I'd love to see more questions so I can be responsive to them and practice my listening skills, which I think I failed at. I'm just going to wait here. I wish I had some music in the background. You guys could hear my music. Question, is there a significance that Italy was chosen as first country to shut down? No, I mean, there was real problems there. I think it's been well documented. Their system was already over capacity. There was a lot of pollution there. There was a lot of issues. However, just as somehow these leaks of people spontaneously dying made their way onto Twitter, I was very suspicious because China is very aggressive on what they call discourse power, which is an actual phrase that has actual meaning. So it's not something I'm just kind of arbitrarily kind of making up that word, that phrase. So it's called discourse power, and it's had those videos. Though had China wanted to not have those shared, Twitter would have shut them down. They would not have existed on social media. So I was wondering how these videos could have leaked out, which also made me suspicious. So when somebody's asking about Italy, I think these things are opportunistic, and I think that the media wanted to kind of amplify that a little bit. Again, I call this the fastest roll-up of power, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself and create these kind of conspiracy theories and allusions to some kind of other types of things. But hopefully one day in the future we can look back and we can kind of ascertain that for ourselves. So is there any other question I can ask anybody? Do I think the leaks were purposeful? I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to keep away from kind of either making that implication. So I want everybody to understand I'm not, or suggesting any other motives. Perhaps they are. I just think that that there were certain peculiarities about them, particularly because having viruses in China is nothing new. They're always wearing masks in China, and the epidemic of SARS is still such a there's still such a residual memory of the SARS epidemic of 2002, 2003, and the failures of the Chinese Communist Party to be honest with the people there. And that's what created what's called the IHR, International Health Regulations, that China and WHO both failed completely. I mean, undeniably failed. So have I missed something? Everyone's spent so much time with me, and I really appreciate it. It's been 59 minutes. Is there any questions? Hopefully this has been fun for everybody. And hopefully I've been able to share with everybody what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and why, as much as I would love to, and sometimes I'm on Twitter and I'm raging because I just, did my thing and it just kind of irritates me. So sometimes I go on Twitter and I'm like typing something about Corona, particularly about a news article that misrepresents something, just because it kind of gnaws at me. Did I see the Twitter videos out of China showing COVID purposely coughing on doorknobs? No, I don't pay attention. Chance of a second waves. Well, we had New York act as an accelerant in the first wave, right? That couldn't have happened without a clear and present urgency to do so. It's pretty remarkable how that happened, and whether that, we'll see how that plays out.